Hello guys, welcome to the channel and welcome to the first film in my first Shameless movie review week. As you know, I've been collecting some of the Shameless films, and so I thought, well, let's get the first sort of batch underway and sort of start reviewing them and the quality of the prints. Obviously a lot of the films I've seen before, but obviously getting them on the new format, you like to sort of like review and look at the sort of like improvements that could have been made to it. But not all of it is an improvement. Some of the films that I've got for the first time, and there's some on DVD. So we're looking at the first one tonight, My Dear Killer, which is a 1972 Giallo film, um, starring George Hilton. It's and I was pleasantly surprised. It was a very interesting and uh, really good Giallo film. To a point, there's one negative, and I'll get to that at the end of the review. This film is it's a 1972 film, but it's got quite a bit of gore and stuff in there for its time, and it's basically about the film starts off strangely. It's like we're at this quarry, and there's one man in like a big sort of crane with a big sort of gripper, and there's one guy sort of down the ground telling him to sort of because in the middle of this quarry it's all sort of turned into like a lake water, and he's getting him to dredge it out for something. But he doesn't. He turns the crane round, and he picks the guy up by the head, and he kills him. And then obviously the crane releases it, and his body drops down, and his head drops down separately. So we started off with quite a cool death right at the beginning of the film, and I just thought, oh, this is going to be good, and it is, and it sort of unfolds, and then the police sort of turn up, our inspector with his moustache and that, and he starts investigating the scene and starts asking a few questions, who's the murderer, and stuff like this, and then there's like a the house on top of the sort of like hill of the quarry, and he goes to speak to the people there, which is an old man and an old woman, and the old man's very contentious, and he's very sort of like sharp with him, and all this sort of thing, because he's been questioned already about it. And that's quite a funny scene, because they start talking about their sort of problems because they're not married, and the woman saying, oh, he just wants to get me into bed, and all this sort of thing. It's really bizarre but really funny and quite sweet. Anyway, so to get that sort of in, he goes and we meet these characters, um, and it's all played out wonderfully. It's an Italian film, of course, um, and then they find in a barn hanging the body of the man that was driving the crane, because they know who it was. They found out straight away because the guy that's on the ground had a card with his name in it, because he's hired him to dredge out this thing. So we go to the construction site, and they said no, they don't know nothing. You know, he's a good worker and nothing like that, and he's not turned up. Anyway, they find his body hanging in this barn, and or everyone's thinking it's suicide until our detective turns up, and he said no, it's been murder, because of the way of the barrel that he would have, his feet don't sort of touch it properly and all this sort of thing. And so now they've got another murder on their hand. And then we go through the investigation, and he's uncovering a kidnapping that's happened of a man and a young girl. And then there's investigations along an insurance sort of policy thing, which doesn't seem to fathom anywhere. I thought, oh, this is going to go down an insurance sort of policy sort of thing. But then it chases down this kidnapping of this young girl and a man, who, by the way, is not a big secret, are dead. They find their bodies sort of decomposed to parts. But then we got our killer in our typical Giallo sort of way, with the black coat and the black gloves, and he's going around bumping off any sort of witnesses or anybody that can give any sort of information of what this kidnapping is. and he bumps off some quite a few women again get bumped off in this film. The old boy in that house by the quarry get bumped off, and there's some quite cool deaths in there. There's some quite lame ones as well, but there's a really cool death with a saw, which is really good, a really good death in the film. It's a shame because she's the most beautiful woman I think I've ever seen, but she gets killed with this saw, and that's an amazing death. Um, and so the investigation sort of unfolds throughout the film, and then when all the information's gathered and he's got all the clues, which I'm not going to tell you any of them, there's a big sit down in this room, almost like a sort of Agatha Christie style, where he goes through and explains what's going on, and he reveals the killer who's actually in the room, and that's fantastic. And I thought, what an original giallo, because most giallos are obsessed sort of killers. But this sort of unfolds. First of all, you think it was an insurance claim, and then it's a kidnapping. So it's got a little bit of a different direction, which I found really interesting, and I really enjoyed this film, My Dear Killer. Now, the director, if I can remember his name, I've got some of his films, but this is the first and only horror film he's done. Is it Tomino Valerius? Yeah, because he does spaghetti westerns. I've got a number of his films, and this is apparently the only sort of horror giallo film he's done. It says finally uncut, so I reckon that must be the Saw death scene, because it is quite grisly, but not too bad. It's watchable, but it's quite grisly, and you feel sorry for the poor woman as this investigation sort of unfolds. But it's really good. Now, the pluses of this DVD: it looks like a Blu-ray. The quality of the picture you may have seen in some of the clips I've put up here looks absolutely amazing for a DVD. It's and this really fathoms my argument about a lot of these companies re-releasing things and then re-releasing it into 4K. And I think, do you know what? That wouldn't look any better in 4K than it does already, because of its age, 1972. And it does have a few sort of minor sort of film noise and sound noise in it, which I love because it's a part of the history of that film and it's a history of that print. And I'm glad to actually now own a copy of this film. It's really cool. The acting is really good. It's really poor. It's just so good. It's very Italian, badly dubbed sort of film, but it's wonderful. The story is a little complex for a giallo, because at a point in the middle of the film, it sort of loses its way a little bit, because you're thinking, what's going on? Because he's talking to so many people about other people. You think, who's this? What they're talking about, and what's going on? Is this an insurance job? But then it sort of really unfolds into this sort of kidnapping, and a guy trying to cover his tracks, and then just finding the killer at the end. But it does lose way a little bit. So I come to the negative point of the film, and it's the ending. It just ends, sort of thing. When they find out who the killer is, it's like take him away, and then it ends. It's like no sort of follow up or sort of epilogue, if you like. And well, maybe that's a cool thing, but I just thinking, maybe I just didn't want it to end. It does run quite a long time as well. It's quite a long running film. Let's have a look. I didn't make any notes, as you can see. Let's have a look. It says 94 minutes. That's an hour and 35 minutes, pretty much. So it was a good run time, and the story did keep you gripped to it. Although, like I said, it did lose its way a little bit. The music's fantastic. It's typical early 70s Italian sort of bossa nova sort of music that you'd expect to see in these sort of films, and it's wonderful. I would love a CD of music of these sort of films. It'd be absolutely awesome. I'm going to score the film a great watch and give it an 8 out of 10. Really cool Giallo film. Absolutely loved it. And the fact that it's a title that I've not really heard of. And I picked it up because I was collecting these Shameless films. And it come with a couple of other films that I picked up at the same time, and they were a good price. They were like, I think this was £6, £6, and it was really, really cool. Yeah, it was a DVD. It's not got a Blu-ray release, so that's fine. Now, if a film comes out on the DVD or Blu-ray, of course I'm going to try and pick up the Blu-ray. But like I said, when it's a really old film, does it really matter? Maybe not. Say if the Blu-ray was like £17.99 and this was £6, I'm picking the DVD up. Obviously, if it's a good quality horror film with more sort of like modern technology, I will go for a Blu-ray just because the print's going to be amazing. But when it's these old sort of films, the quality difference, like I said to you, on this DVD looks no different than a Blu-ray. So I'm glad I went with the Blu-ray on this. So that's really cool. My Dear Killer, 8 out of 10. And if you guys seen it, if you have, let me know down below. You might not have, because it's quite an obscure little title. But like I said, the director's only done one sort of horror film, so he's not gone on to giving himself a name into the sort of horror genre. So this could have easily passed quite a few people by. But it is really good. If you love Giallo films, this is one worth picking up because it's a bit different. It's got a different sort of storyline. There is nudity and sexual, in sort of, because a lot of Giallo films are very sort of more sexually orientated. This one isn't. There is some in there, but it's not the theme. It's more of the case study of this officer as he's trying to chase it up. It's almost like a crime thriller, but with a Giallo sort of feel to it. It's really, really cool. Absolutely loved it. Guys, till my next video, please check out some horror channels. Check out Horror Hands, The Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Design, Pizzawell. I'm Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, and Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And a massive shout out to the lad. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.